Welcome to Theory of Pets. I'm a passionate pet owner with a drive to help others like me uncover the truth about the pet industry and what goes on behind the scenes. Dog training is a topic that I am asked about all the time, from the right types of training to how to train different types of dogs, stubborn dogs, small breeds, large breeds, active dogs. I often have dog trainers on the podcast just to talk about their specialties. Most dog trainers use a certain type of training, say, for example, clicker training, or they do focus on different types of training, like obedience training specifically, or they work with difficult dogs. That's something that can be really hard for pet owners if you have an especially stubborn dog. So today I actually wanted to get down to kind of the root of all of it, in my opinion. So I talked to Steve Lankfer. He has been a professional dog trainer for more than 30 years. He created a program called SpeakDog, and it's a philosophy where dog owners learn the true language of canines that includes tone, timing, and consistency. So you might say, what does all of this have to do with dog training? But in my opinion, it has everything to do with dog training specifically, but also just with your relationship with your pet. Steve has worked with multiple Humane Society locations, independent no-kill shelters, and doggy daycare businesses to work with dogs. He works with all dogs, but specifically with owners and, shelters who are saying, Jesus, dog is really hard to train. We've tried things. It's not working. What are we doing wrong? And Steve will explain in the podcast, and you'll hear him speak about his passion in just a minute, but it's really not anything that necessarily you're doing wrong with the training aspect, but it's just the way that you're communicating. You're speaking one language, your dog understands a different language. So you really need to put those two pieces together in order to have a successful training session, but also just to be successful in caring for your pet and, making sure that you have the relationship that you want, the bond that you want with your dog. So I will let Steve take it from here. He is going to talk about SpeakDog. I have asked him to come back and do other podcasts because there is so much to it. But today we're just going to talk about kind of the basics of the program and the success that he's seen with it.
Well, thank you for having me to your podcast. I'm excited to be here. It's an important subject, especially in light of the pandemic that we're in together, and and how it affects dogs, especially in light of adoptions. It's been a busy couple months, and lots of conversations about dogs. And my history with dogs goes way back to my childhood as a little boy. We were the average family that had one small dog. But I was really intrigued by dogs, all along, and all the way to the day I was about 11 years old, and we had an incident with a couple stray dogs at the park or the pond where I grew up. And although my friend got away from these two dogs, I did not, and it scared me. I thought, man, I thought I was a dog guy, a dog kid, right? And from that day on, I had a fascination with dogs and how they do what they do and how they work. And both my parents grew up on a farm, and we just love animals. We got equestrians in the family, and my thing was dogs. So that really planted a seed and gave me an interest in dogs all along. When I got out of college, and I'm a full-grown man now, and I was about to go back to graduate school. I was fortunate enough, another long story, but to get into a small school in Indiana. It was the University of Notre Dame, and I decided to get my first big dog because I'd be a full-time grad student on my way to South Bend, Indiana. And at that time, my parents' vet had a friend, a colleague, that was a master canine instructor down with the Indiana State Police. And he said, Steve, this dog you have is an Akita, very large, and they can be assertive. I told him, I looked back and I smiled at, oh, I know a lot about Akitas. I went to my local pet store and I bought the book on Akitas. So I think I'm okay. And he smiled. He said, yeah, right. So you may want to look up my friend. He's down there in that area, and he won't train your dog, but he might allow you into his academy if you're interested. This trainer was a fairly, short, stocky German guy named Ken. So, and all of his commands were in German or Deutsch. So I'm sitting there with my dog, and we're going through some exercise, and I thought to myself, this is really fascinating because I don't know a word he's saying. And if I don't know a word he's saying, do these dogs really know a single word he's saying? And that led me to some more research about dogs. And the fact of the matter is, here we are 30 years later, and the reality is that they don't. I've traveled the world for business and other interests, and because I've had this passion about dogs, I can tell you, as I've traveled the world and been on different continents, that no matter where you're at on the planet, no dogs understand the human dialect where they're at. And here's what's really fascinating and cool. Did you know that no matter where you go in the world, no matter what continent you're on, all dogs speak the same language? They don't understand any Chinese or Mandarin, German or Deutsch, Spanish or Portuguese or English. They're all fluent in the same canine language. So that's really where my training started. I started a business officially in the year 2000. Can't believe it's been 20 years now. And I established a reputation that kind of got ahead of itself with a rehabilitation program. So I am known with the Humane Society in some of the Midwest states, especially Michigan, as a rehabilitation expert. So it doesn't really matter if the dog is extremely aggressive and can't be approached, or if the dog has been neurologically or physically traumatized and can't be approached. The key to rehabilitating dogs is the same. So you cannot love, and this is really the essence of SpeakDog, is that it's not possible to love and lead somebody or something if you don't speak their language. You can't love and lead somebody or something if they don't understand what you're saying. So since dogs will never understand our dialect, it's really fun and it's really rewarding to help people become a little bit more fluent in canine. And you can speak dog through any dialect. That's the fun part. I think that's why the book has done so well internationally, is that you can learn to speak dog, and you can speak dog through Mandarin, you can speak dog through Deutsch, you can speak dog through Spanish, and of course English. Because really, the language of canines is tone, timing, and consistency. It's tone, timing, and consistency. So that has been the essence of SpeakDog, and the final part of the whole, what we do to help people is, dogs, we all know, because we love them, that dogs are pack animals. But you know what? So are elephants, all these mammals. Elephants run in a tribe, and horses run in a herd, and even dolphins are mammals, and they swim in a pod, right? So they're all mammals, and they're all pack animals, but canines are very unique. They're a little bit different. So canines have a biological innate need for social structure and leadership, and which is why they make such great working animals, right? So dogs have hundreds of ways that they interact together in their natural state. And what SpeakDog has done is I have taken those 100+ ways and we've repackaged them into the 7 sacred ways that you can learn to love and lead your dog And you, by doing so, you can actually, because you're an intelligent human being, you can place yourself or assert yourself neurologically, chemically, in your dog's brain as their canine leader. And what's really important to tell viewers is this has got nothing to do with alpha, one of my pet peeves, right? So it's got nothing to do with alpha, and it's got nothing to do with physical submission. These are ways that you, and you're doing them every day, I'm sure we'll talk about them, but that you can love and lead your dog, and you can place yourself neurologically as their canine leader. When you do this, your relationship will completely change. And this is the relationship that sets the foundation for 100% obedience 100% of the time.
That's amazing. Just to hear the way that you communicate all of that. You're obviously such a good teacher, and it's very, kind of user friendly. So it definitely seems like an approach that any pet parent could use.
Well, the important thing is, we've created all of these really good intentioned physical devices, right, to control or to restrain our dogs, and that's okay. I mean, they work, and some work on some dogs better than others, and others work on other dogs. I'm talking about a walking harness, right, or a special collar, special nose device, right? We have electronic collars and beepers and vibrators and clickers and treats, and we believe at SpeakDog that we've created all these things to control and restrain our dogs because we don't know how to control them, right? And we don't know how to control them because we don't know their language. We don't know how to communicate. And it's so rewarding to watch people just get huge smiles or even tears of joy, like, oh my gosh, like your dog is looking at us differently. I'm like, yes, you guys, it's just like, if I may just tell a short story, and this is for any listeners that are interested in the book. This is chapter 11. It's the final chapter in the book. It's like if you and I, Samantha, if you and a couple of your girlfriends went into a classroom full of third graders. Now here's the catch. These third graders are all Chinese children, and they only speak Mandarin. Well, I have looked at, I know who you are, and your voice is so nurturing. You've been so successful on the air. There's a reason for it, right? You're a beautiful woman. You're just a good human being. And these kids are going to be drawn to you and your friends. Even though you don't speak their language, they're going to like you. They're going to trust you. They're going to want to sit on your lap. And you're going to smile, and they're going to smile back, right? And let's just say for a moment that a half hour later I walk in. And I walk in with a couple hockey buddies of mine. And we just got done playing a hockey game, right? So we're a little bit sweaty. We're a little bit messy. Maybe we don't smell as good as you girls do. Our voices aren't nearly as nurturing as yours, right? The kids are going to kind of look at us like, whoa, those are men. But if I said to them, Shang Shang Ting, and I said to them, presuming that I spoke Mandarin, and I said, how are you doing today? Their jaws would drop, and they would look at each other like, oh my gosh, he speaks Chinese. And assuming that I did, I would say, I do. Yeah, yes, I do. And it's nice to meet everybody here today. Now, they're not going to run to me and sit in my lap because I don't have a nurturing voice. I'm not as good looking as you. I don't smell as good as you at that moment. But if in another half hour later, somebody with authority walked into that classroom, probably their principal, right? Probably in that culture male, and he said in Mandarin, "Children, listen. This is a dire crisis emergency. Your parents are missing. I know this is a horrible story, but follow me here. Your parents are missing. We don't know what's happening. You'll be leaving this building immediately for multiple days and nights. You are going to line up at one or two doors immediately. That door was Samantha. That door was Stephen. Move. Now. Move. Well, they're going to look at you, Smith, like, you know what? I do like you. I trust you. But I don't know a word you're saying. And since Steve speaks my language, he doesn't smell as good as you, Samantha, but Steve speaks my language, and this is a crisis. I'm going to follow Steve. And this is what happens with traumatized dogs at the Humane Society when I show up. Sometimes it takes 45 minutes, sometimes as little as 5 or 10. But you too, the listeners, if you apply these 7 sacred ways, you can become a little more fluent canine. You can speak their language. The dog's jaws are going to drop, and they're going to be like, you speak my language. And you're going to confirm that you do, and you're going to love and lead that animal. And when you do that, all the stress and anxiety that some of our dogs have, we should talk more about that and why that is, it just goes away. And they just follow you. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad, Steve, you showed up. Because nobody here speaks my language. I'm living in a leadership vacuum. I don't know the sounds. I don't know what anyone's saying. I don't know. They don't know me, and I don't know them. And I am just traumatized. So you get a feel for, of course, my passion, but you get a feel for what it's like on the other end, right, for the dogs. Right? So if you are a certain, it's not always breed related at all. But if you're a socially assertive, that does not mean aggressive, and this is in the book, but if you're socially assertive and somewhat neurologically unstable, it's not a bad thing. All dogs are a little bit stable or unstable neurologically as canines, not as people. It can be, if you're socially assertive and a little bit unstable, it can be, you can have anxiety and a lot of stress if you're living in a home where, by the nature of the activities and how you're being treated, hint, hint, 7 sacred ways, you've been placed into a social placement, which means high up. So you're high up in this pack. You're high up in the social structure because you've been told that you are. You eat before the children do. You go in and out of the door ahead of the missus. When you go on walks, you pull. So you always walk ahead and you pull, which, by the way, hint, hint, is wrong. So the dog has been told in perfectly clear canine, right? And sometimes we don't even know that we're talking to them, but we are. And in their language and in their ways, we are saying very clear to them that I, your owner, I am unable or unwilling to lead. I am unable or unwilling to lead. And so you may walk ahead and pull on the leash. And then we wonder why all of a sudden, Steve, how many calls have you heard about this, man? Where the golden retriever, Susie, all of a sudden, out of the blue, she bit somebody. And we just don't know what's wrong with her. Why would she do that all of a sudden out of the blue? And the reality is, for all of us listening, it never happens that way. So if you have such a dog, just know, be comforted that never happens. Never. It's not how canines work. So they never all of a sudden out of the blue bite somebody. What's happened is Susie has been told over and over for months or years that she has a social placement. And one day she just decided to exercise her placement. And the question is, well, was she antagonized, do you think, Steve? And my answer usually is, it's a moot question. It doesn't really matter if she's antagonized or not. She did that because you told her she could.
Absolutely. I mean, as you mentioned, obviously I get questions all the time, and probably the most common topic is around dog training and dog behavior, and it sort of all leads back to the same thing. It comes down to, I've tried everything and I just can't get my dog to behave. I can't get my dog to stop doing this certain behavior, or I don't think my dog is, we're not communicating and he's not understanding what I'm expecting of him. And, it all sort of comes back to that same issue of I'm trying to get my dog to do something and he just doesn't know what it is that I'm expecting of him. So I obviously, that's why I was drawn to SpeakDog, and we don't want to give everything away because we still want people to check out the book and the website and all of that. But it's really amazing, and I think you have a way of putting it in such plain language that any pet parent could pick up your book and pick up this type of communication, and just it would change everybody's relationship with their dog. If every pet owner had a copy of your book, the world would be a much different place.
Yeah. So, well, thank you, and I appreciate that, and I always want to give everybody as much information as I can, because it's really it's not literally, it never was about selling books, but the reality about the book, and this is maybe important for your listeners too, is I was encouraged by the Humane Society to write this book several years ago, and I'm only a little bit kidding for all you listeners when I say I can barely read, let alone write. So I'm a slow reader, right? And I always have been. So I never really took. I mean, I took it as a compliment, but I never took it seriously. And then one day, I made the mistake of sharing this with my mother, and that the Humane Society was encouraging a book to be written. And my mom's, of course, was like, Stephen, you have to do that. This is too important. You have to do that. So I tried to convince her that as much as she loved me and as proud as she was of me, that it probably wouldn't go well, and I wouldn't be able to write a book. So my mom was a wonderful lady. I'm very lucky. I mean, we all have great moms, but my mom was certainly a good person, very funny. And before she passed away, just 2 years ago, she made me promise, sneaky gal, I tell you. And I knew she was up to something. She says, "Hey, Steve, we were just sitting outside and enjoying some lemonade down there in central Kentucky and enjoying some sunshine." And she said, I do want you to make me a promise. I want you to promise me something." I said, "Mom, absolutely anything." And then she got a smirk on her face, and I said, I think I know what you're up to. And she said, "No, I'm really serious, though. I want you to promise me that you'll try. Just try." And this is in the introduction of the book, the dedication of the book. So I said, "Mom, I tell you, I will do that." You know what's interesting, you guys? There's a way that this all works out. Regardless of your faith, it's interesting how this all works out. I literally made one phone call, and I would have been okay with that being my try, right? And that one phone call led to a lunch in Tennessee with a screenwriter, and that 1 hour lunch turned into a 3 hour lunch, and that lunch turned into another meeting and conversation. And I have to be honest with everybody that might be listening. I had a lot of help. The content is 100% SpeakDog, 100% mine, but I had a lot of help getting this into a book that is really, really easy and fun to read. And the point of it is this. The reason I want listeners to know that you won't buy this book and you'll read this book and all your problems will be fixed. Please don't buy the book if that's what you might think is going to happen, and here's why. You cannot learn to speak German by reading English out of a book. And everyone smiles and nods, but well, of course you can't. It doesn't make any sense. Right? You're not going to learn to speak German by reading English out of a book. Well, it's very similar here, you guys. You cannot become fluent in canine by reading English out of a book. And that's why, Samantha, we've got an online courses. We have a website, which I'm sure you'll share.
Yeah.
There's free videos, free information. You do not have to pay. And if you're like, holy cow, I think that I could benefit from this, then we do have online courses, because you must. Even if you're a better reader than I am, and that wouldn't be saying much, but you're not going to be able to read 10 books and then go out and just snap your fingers and have your problems with your dog fixed. You You don't have to take the 20 years that I took. That's the good news. So we can fast track you. We can help you become fluent in canine faster. So you don't need to invest 20 years like I did, but you need to hear it and see it. Hear it and see it to become really fluent in canine. Because, again, we go back to the tone and timing and consistency. When we say tone, we mean that. You must learn to be able to differentiate your tones. It's going to give your dog such an easier time to understand what you're trying to get him or her to do. Timing, we humans, we talk about, timing is everything. Timing is everything. It's true, guys. It is. And for dogs, timing is a split second. It's not 3 or 4 seconds later. Like you can't correct your dog, and you can't really effectively praise your dog, 3, 4, 5, 8, 10 seconds later. It's very confusing to me. Because are you praising me for taking 2 steps with my left foot forward just now, or are you praising me for what I did 8 seconds ago? Because if that's the case, you're you stink at speaking dog, right? Because that was 8 seconds ago. Very confusing to me. So we help people understand that hey, this is it. It's fun and it's powerful. If you can practice and learn to become really effective with your tone and your timing and be consistent, your relationship with your dog, it will change in days, hours and days, not weeks and months. Very rewarding, yes.
And the thing that I think I like most about it and why I recommend it to people when they ask me questions is, there's so many different types of dog training out there. And that's usually the question that I get is, this is what I want. These are the results that I want. What type of training would be best for me and my dog? Or this is the type of dog that I have, and these are the struggles that we're having, and what would the best type of training be? And, I always tell people it doesn't matter if you're using clicker training or, reward-based training or whatever you're doing. If you're not communicating correctly with your dog, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It's not going to be effective at the end of the day.
Well, here's one more level. I agree with you 100%. And one more level that I've learned is really important is that, all obedience is based on relationship. So trust me when I say this. So I've worked with all kinds of dogs and all kinds of levels. So I'm talking. I've worked with police departments. I've worked with police dogs. I've worked with socially rehabilitated some military dogs. I've worked with hunting dogs. So here's what's important for everybody to understand is that you're 100% right, Samantha. I mean, dogs are really efficient at Pavlov's law. And most of us know what that is, right? Stimulus response, stimulus response, stimulus response. It goes all the way back, right, to the scientist Pavlov, big dog lover, right? Had multiple dogs, and every night he'd ring the dinner bell, and they'd all come running, salivating. And one day, because he's a scientist probably, his mind thought, I wonder if they're salivating because they know it's dinner time, or are they salivating because of this bell? So the next day, anybody can Google Pavlov's law and get this. He rang the dinner bell at noon when it's not dinner time. And guess what happened? All the dogs came running salivating. He's like, oh my gosh. They don't know it's dinner time. I think they've been conditioned to salivate the sound of this bell. Well, this led to a whole series of very powerful studies, you guys, right? So, it's sure enough, you can condition a dog to do things if it's rewarded. In this case, the reward is food, but it can be praise, especially if you're perceived as a leader, right? So, I would love to come back to that, but as the traveling circuses started, this is after now, right? Pavlov. So the traveling circus in Europe, what was one of the favorite acts of all the families? It was the dogs. I mean, the horses were beautiful and powerful, right? The elephants were huge and majestic. But the dogs, boy, they're funny. They're funny, and they're so smart, right? How do we get them to dance like that? And he told the poodle, Polly the poodle, to get on caboose number 13, and she got on number 13. Right? Well, we all know that poodle had been trained or conditioned to get on to that caboose number 13, right? Because there's going to be a treat there waiting for her, or during the week when we're practicing, that's the one she's going to get on, right? But we could have used another word and got her on a different caboose. Right? So we can train and condition dogs to do things. And where I'm going with this is that the problem with training our dogs with tricks and treats is that your dog will, in the real world, they will encounter a higher value reward. Squirrel, right? At some point, we all joke about squirrels, right? Your dog is going to come across something that has a higher value reward to it than the treat that's in your pouch. Trust me, right? So all dogs are different, so it could be different things. It's going to happen, and that's when we get frustrated. So with SpeakDog, works with people and say, hey, if you want to have 100% obedience 100% of the time, the only way to do it is through relationship. So, but it's important for us to understand that, just like you and I, Samantha, right? So our relationship is what it is at this stage, because all relationships are made up of two things. It's in the book: time and events. Time and events. There is no way around that. So, your relationship with your friends, your relationship with your parents, your relationship with God, your relationship with your dog. It's a function of time and events. But it's critical that those time and events are done in their language and are done in a way that you are loving and leading. So when you have that leadership relationship, that is when you'll be able to have 100% obedience 100% of the time. That is super powerful stuff, and that's when we just get dogs that are so socially broken that they won't come, or they're so socially broken that they're biting people, right? Or they're so socially broken that they're having accidents in the house, chewing at things. The list goes on and on and on. And it's so frustrating for us because we love them. Like, we think if we can love them out of this behavior, that's what we'll do, right? We'll keep loving them. We'll love them out of this. But dogs need, that's a capital N. So dogs need our leadership more than they want our love. And I know that that's a buzzkill for some of us out there, but if you'll accept that and buy into that, especially with certain breeds and certain socially assertive dogs, that's really what they need. They're biologically, innately designed to need it, right? So if we truly love them, we will provide the leadership, first, and then all the other fun human stuff, cuddling and petting, and second. So a lot of dogs are great cuddlers, and they like it as much as we do. But that's not what they need from us first. They need our leadership. That's just the way they're made.
Podcast and sharing all of this great information. I'm thrilled that he was able to come on today. I'm also excited to tell you that if you want to learn more about SpeakDog, the 7 sacred ways, if you look into his method of training, he is going to come back in a couple of weeks and share some more information with us. So if you think this is a training method that you might use with your dogs, just take some time in the next week or two. There are links below this podcast that will take you to Steve's website. It will also take you to links for the book, so you can look into that and see if it's something that maybe would be a good option for you and your dog. And stay tuned. I have other podcasts coming, and in a couple of weeks we'll have Steve back on. He'll share some more information, so that might help you once you do a little research on your own. That might help you figure out if this is the best option for you and your pup before you look into the training videos and maybe purchasing the book if you haven't already. So again, thank you to Steve. I really appreciate him coming on. Click the links below the podcast for more information. Thanks again for tuning in. If you guys have any topics or suggestions that you would like to hear on a future podcast, feel free to email me. You can also jump on our website, theoryofpets.com, leave any suggestions, tips, anything like that there, any questions that you might have, send them to us. I'll try to answer them as best I can or find an expert in the pet industry that can do that for you. And while you're on there, if you wouldn't mind taking just a minute to leave me a quick review, that always helps me when I'm reaching out to experts. I can show them that you guys are out there listening, loving it, and you want to hear more. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I will be back very soon with another hot topic.